The sun hung low in the Arizona sky, painting the desert in shades of amber and gold. The light caught on the beads of sweat running down Mai's face as she ran through the scrubland, her breath coming in sharp, painful gasps. Her bare, bleeding feet found little purchase on the rocky ground. Behind her, the sound of hoofbeats grew louder. 3 riders were gaining on her. Her lungs burned with each breath, and the torn edges of her simple cotton tunic snagged on the brush. She had been running since dawn when they had first caught sight of her near the creek. Hours of pursuit had left her legs trembling, her vision blurring. Still, she ran. The land sloped downward, and through the haze of exhaustion, Mai saw a glimmer of water, a river cutting through the harsh landscape. Hope surged within her, quickly replaced by despair as she realized the water offered no escape, only a moment's respite. The hoofbeats were so close now she could hear the horses snorting. A whoop of triumph echoed across the canyon. Mai stumbled into the shallow river, the cool water a brief shock against her skin. She whirled to face her pursuers, her back pressed against a large boulder. 3 men on horseback emerged from the tree line, their faces flushed with exertion and the thrill of the hunt. The one in front, with a red kerchief around his neck and a twisted smile, slid from his saddle. Fletcher Thorne. His reputation extended throughout the territory as a man who took pleasure in cruelty. Well, he drawled, stepping into the water. Looks like our little songbird got her feathers wet. The other 2 men laughed, dismounting to join him. Please, Mai said, her voice a tremor. I have done nothing to you. Nothing? Thorne's voice hardened. Your kind took everything from me. Took jobs, brought sickness. He splashed closer. And you think you can just wander through our lands? I am only passing through, she said, her back pressing harder against the rock. To find my family. Thorne's laugh had no humor in it. He reached out, fingering the small, carved jade pendant at her throat. This looks valuable. Bet it would fetch a good price. With a sudden jerk, he tore the pendant from her neck. Mai lunged forward instinctively, her hand reaching for the precious heirloom, her mother's last gift before the attack on their camp. No, she cried. The backhand came swift and hard, sending her sprawling into the water. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs. Now look what you made me do, Thorne said, a mockery of regret. His companion snickered, moving closer. One of them pulled at her sleeve. Might as well take the rest of it off so it can dry, he suggested. Mai fought wildly as they tore at her tunic, but it was 3 against 1. Thorne grabbed her long black braid, yanking her upright. Maybe we should teach her what happens to trespassers. Corbin Hayes crouched in the shadows of a juniper tree, listening. He had been mending fences along the western edge of his property when he'd first heard the commotion. Instinct, born from years as a railroad foreman in rough territory, had sent him moving quietly through the brush, his Winchester rifle held ready. His right leg ached, an old wound from a mining explosion that never healed right. The pain was a constant reminder of a life filled with blood and regret. These days, Corbin kept to himself on the small ranch he'd built. Through the branches, he saw them, 3 men surrounding a woman in the shallow water. He recognized Fletcher Thorne, a man known for his violent hatred of the Chinese workers who had helped build the railroad. Corbin's jaw tightened as he saw the woman's torn clothes and the way she fought. He'd seen enough. With practiced care, Corbin raised the Winchester. He didn't aim at the men, but at a large rock jutting from the water 10 feet to their right. The rifle's report cracked through the evening stillness like thunder, sending splinters of stone flying. The men froze, then scattered, reaching for weapons. As they sought cover, the woman's desperate eyes locked on the trees where the shot had originated. Believing another attacker had arrived, she cried out in a voice filled with terror and exhaustion, "They stole my clothes. Rancher, please help me." "Next one won't miss," Corbin called, his voice carrying clear across the water. "That creek marks my property line. You're trespassing." "Hayes?" Thorne called out, recognizing the voice. "This ain't your business." "You're on my land," Corbin replied evenly. "That makes it my business. Now you boys have a choice. Ride out or I start making widows." A tense silence followed. "This ain't over, Hayes," Thorne finally spat, grabbing his horse's reins. "She ain't worth dying for, but I won't forget this." "I'm counting on it," Corbin replied. With venomous glares, the three mounted their horses and galloped away. Corbin waited a full minute before emerging from his hiding place. He approached slowly, rifle lowered. The woman watched him wearily, gathering the torn remnants of her tunic around herself. Up close, Corbin could see the bruise on her cheek and the scratches on her arms. Her dark eyes were filled with exhaustion and fear, but also a fierce intelligence that assessed him. "You hurt?" he asked gruffly. She didn't answer, her gaze flicking between his face and the rifle. Corbin sighed, slinging the weapon over his shoulder. "Name's Corbin Hayes. This is my land." "They stole my pendant," she said, her English accented but clear. Corbin nodded, respecting the way she stated facts without self-pity. "Can't help with the pendant," he said, shrugging out of his worn canvas coat. "But you can use this." He held the coat out. She eyed it suspiciously, then waded forward and took it, turning her back to pull it on over her torn clothes. When she faced him, some small measure of dignity had been restored. "Thank you," she said, the words stiff. "You got somewhere to go?" he asked. Her gaze drifted eastward. "I was traveling to San Francisco. To find my brother." Corbin's expression didn't change, but something inside him went still. "That's a long way on foot," he said. "And Thorne and his boys will be looking for you. My ranch is about a mile west. You can rest there till morning. I'll loan you a horse." Suspicion darkened her eyes. "Why would you help me?" "Because I've seen what men like Thorne do when no one's watching," Corbin said simply. "And I've done enough watching in my life." Whatever she saw in his face must have satisfied her, for she gave a small nod. "I am called Corbin," he replied. "Can you walk?" Mai took a tentative step, then winced as her foot found a sharp stone. Corbin moved forward and offered his arm. She hesitated only briefly before accepting it. They made slow progress through the twilight, connected by necessity and the shared rhythm of their footsteps across the dusty ground. Corbin's ranch was modest, a small log cabin, a barn, and a corral. It was the home of a solitary man. As they approached, he led her to a rain barrel behind the cabin. "Got water here if you want to wash up. I'll get supper started." Mai waited until he was inside before she washed away the dust and sweat of her long flight. She didn't trust this man or his unexpected kindness, but something in his weary eyes felt familiar, one survivor acknowledging another. When she entered the cabin, she found him at the stove. The interior was spare but tidy. What caught her attention were the small touches, a child's carved wooden horse on a shelf, and a framed photograph of a woman with two small children, a boy and a girl. Following her gaze, Corbin's face tightened. "My wife, Anna," he said gruffly, "and our children, Daniel and Rose." The past tense told Mai all she needed to know. "I am sorry for your loss," she said formally. They ate in silence, the simple meal of beans and bacon a welcome comfort. Afterward, Corbin prepared a makeshift bed of blankets for her on the floor near the stove. "You can sleep here," he said. "It's warm." Mai lay down, still wearing his coat. Despite her wariness, the warmth and exhaustion conspired against her, and within minutes she was asleep. Corbin sat in a chair by the table, his Winchester across his knees, watching over her. He hadn't planned on taking in a stray, especially one who brought the past crashing down on him. His gaze drifted to the photograph. All gone now, taken by the fever that had swept through the territory 3 years ago while he was away working as a foreman for the railroad. A small sound drew his attention back to Mai. Something had slipped from the pocket of the coat she wore. Carefully, Corbin crossed to where she slept. It was a small, silk pouch. It had fallen open, revealing a folded piece of paper and a small, carved wooden token. He hesitated, but suspicion won out. He gently unfolded the paper. On it were a few names written in Chinese characters, and below them, one name in English, Corbin Hayes. A cold weight settled in his stomach. Before he could react, Mai's eyes snapped open. She saw the token in his hand, and all traces of sleep vanished, replaced by alarm and fury. "Give that back," she demanded. "Why do you have my name on this?" he asked, his own expression hardening. Mai's eyes darted between the rifle and his face. "It is a blood promise," she said with evident reluctance. "A vow to find the men responsible for the death of my family." "Your family," he repeated, the words thick in his throat. At the railroad camp, Mai continued, watching him closely. 3 years ago. The foreman came at dawn. They said there was a strike, but there was no strike. They killed everyone they found. My mother, my father, my husband. Her voice caught, but she mastered it. My brother and I escaped only because we were away from the main camp. The memories Corbin had spent years trying to drown rose up, screams cutting through the dawn mist, the smell of gunpowder and blood. "And you think I was responsible," he said flatly. Mai's chin lifted. "I know you were there. A foreman named Hayes. You led them to the camp." He hadn't led them, but he had been there. He was a foreman for the railroad company. "I didn't know what they planned," he said, the words sounding hollow. "I was just doing my job." "Your job?" Mai repeated. "Was your job to watch as they killed women and children?" Corbin closed his eyes briefly. "No," he said quietly. He looked at her, seeing a survivor shaped by the same tragedy that had broken him. With a slow movement, he held out the paper and token. "Here. It's yours." "You're not going to deny it?" she asked, surprised. "There's no justifying what happened that day," he said, his voice rough. "If you want revenge, you should take it now." He gestured to the rifle leaning against his chair. "I won't stop you." Something shifted in Mai's gaze. "The vow is not just for you," she said. "There was another. The one who gave the orders." "Colonel Thorne," Corbin said, the name bitter on his tongue. Mai's sharp intake of breath confirmed his guess. "The man at the river," she said, making the connection. "Fletcher Thorne." "His son," Corbin confirmed. Dawn was beginning to lighten the sky. "You still set on finding your brother?" he asked finally. Mai nodded. After the attack, many survivors fled toward San Francisco. "I heard he might be there." "It's a long journey," Corbin said. "And Thorne will be watching the trails." "I will manage." Something in her quiet determination stirred a long dormant part of him. "The horses need feeding," he said abruptly. "Rest today. We head out tomorrow." He didn't wait for a response, stepping out into the cool dawn air. The past he'd tried so hard to outrun had circled back to find him. He had to see this through. Later, as the sun rose, Mai stepped out onto the porch. "I'll help you get there," Corbin said, surprising himself. "Not because of what happened, but because it's the right thing to do now." "Why should I trust you?" she asked. "You shouldn't," he said honestly. "But I'm your best chance of getting to San Francisco alive." A flicker of pragmatic acceptance crossed her face. "Then we have an agreement," she said. "Until we find my brother." "Until then," Corbin echoed. Two broken people, bound by a shared past, facing an uncertain future with nothing but necessity and ghosts between them. The next morning, they left at first light. Corbin led the way, heading west. The rhythm of hoofbeats was the only sound in the morning stillness. They rode in silence for hours, the weight of their history pressing down like the desert heat. By midday, they stopped at a small spring to rest. "Your leg pains you?" Mai asked, noting the way he stretched it. "Old wound," he grunted. "I know remedies," she offered. "Plants that can help." The offer took Corbin by surprise. "Why would you help me?" "A blood promise can be paid in many ways," she said. "Not all require blood. We both need you strong for what lies ahead." Before he could respond, the sound of distant hoofbeats reached them. Both tensed. "Riders," Corbin said, his voice low. "3 of them." It's Thorn. There was no time to flee. They took cover behind a rocky outcropping. The riders slowed as they approached. Hayes! Thorn called. We know you're in there. The woman's under my protection, Corbin shouted back. Heard some interesting news in town, Thorn called, a new edge to his voice. About you. About that railroad camp 3 years back. My pa told me all about it. How you tried to stop him. Your PA's a butcher, Corbin replied coldly. And you're following in his footsteps. Thorn's face contorted with rage. This ain't over, Hayes. My PA's coming back. He's got friends in high places. They'll deal with both of you. With that, Thorn and his men wheeled their horses around and rode off. They gave up too easily, Mai said, voicing Corbin's own concern. He's gone to get his father, Corbin said, his expression grave. If Colonel Thorn is back in the territory, things just got a lot more complicated. Mai's hand went to the hidden pouch containing her vow. Or simpler, she said, her voice hard with purpose. They rode on, a new urgency in their pace. They traveled through the night, seeking shelter in a hidden canyon Corbin knew from his past. There, under the stars, he finally told her the full truth. Colonel Thorn ordered the attack, he explained, his voice low and pained. He called it pacification, said the Chinese workers were planning an uprising. It was a lie. He just wanted them gone. He looked into the fire, unable to meet her eyes. When the shooting started, I tried to stop it. I drew my own weapon, fired on my own side. Created enough confusion for some of your people to escape into the woods. That's why I left the railroad. Thorn would have had me hanged, but it was easier to let me resign quietly. Mai was silent for a long time, absorbing this. You tried to save some of us, she said finally. Not enough, Corbin replied, the familiar guilt washing over him. Too late. Mai finished applying a poultice of herbs to his leg. No, she agreed. It does not erase the past. But it changes how I see you in the present. The next day, they were crossing an open valley when 5 riders appeared on the horizon. At their head was Fletcher Thorn, and beside him, a taller, older man with the rigid posture of a career military man, Colonel Thorn. They were surrounded. Read, the colonel said, his voice crisp and authoritative. I see you found yourself a new companion. His gaze shifted to Mai, cold and assessing. I know who you are, Mai said, her voice remarkably steady. The man who ordered the death of my family. I've ordered the death of many hostiles, he replied with casual indifference. Part of the job. It was personal to me, Mai said. The standoff escalated quickly. Corbin's rifle was in his hands, aimed at the colonel's chest. Mai had drawn a revolver Corbin had given her, covering Fletcher. Think carefully, Hayes, the colonel said. Kill me, and my men will ensure neither of you leaves this valley alive. In that moment of clarity, Corbin made a decision. We'll come with you, he said, lowering his rifle slowly. He gave Mai a subtle look, urging her to trust him. Reluctantly, she lowered her weapon. They were escorted to Fort Lowell, the nearby army post, which was, to their dismay, under Colonel Thorn's temporary command. They were placed under guard in the visitors' quarters. Morgan's playing a game, Corbin whispered once they were alone. He's brought us inside the fort. That's an opportunity. That night, they put their plan into action. Mai feigned a sudden illness, and when the young guard entered their room, Corbin swiftly and silently knocked him unconscious. They slipped out into the darkness and made their way to the headquarters building. While Mai kept watch, Corbin broke into the colonel's office. He found what he was looking for in a filing cabinet, transfer records. Many of the survivors from the camp, including children, had been sent to a shelter in Tucson. And there, on the list, was a name, Jin, Mai's brother. He was listed as having been transferred to Tucson before heading further west. Corbin was about to leave when the colonel's personal journal caught his eye. The recent entries confirmed their worst fears. Thorne planned to use Corbin to track down a band of resistant Apache, using Mai as leverage, and then eliminate them both. Official report, the journal read, attempted escape, regrettable but necessary force. A soft whistle from Mai warned him of an approaching patrol. Corbin slipped back out the window just in time. They fled, making their way to a drainage culvert under the south wall. Just as they emerged on the other side, the fort's alarm bell began to ring. They ran, rifle shots cracking behind them, and disappeared into the night. Their flight led them to the ranch of an old, cantankerous man named Gus, who had no love for the army or Colonel Thorne. He gave them fresh horses, supplies, and information. Thorne was gathering forces for a major campaign, a final solution to the Apache problem. With renewed urgency, they rode for Tucson. Finding Mai's brother was now intertwined with a need to expose the colonel before he could commit another massacre. They arrived in the dusty, bustling town of Tucson 2 days later. Following the information from the records, they found the shelter, a small, underfunded institution run by a weary but kind-hearted woman. She remembered Jin. A quiet boy, very protective of the others, she said, consulting a worn ledger. He was here for a few months. A family heading to California adopted him and his 2 young friends. They wanted to give the boys a new start. She provided a name and a last known direction. It was not the reunion Mai had hoped for, but it was something far more precious, the knowledge that her brother was alive, safe, and not alone. The relief that washed over Mai was profound. For the first time in years, the burning need for vengeance that had driven her began to cool, replaced by a quiet, deep-seated peace. Their final task remained. Corbin, using the knowledge from the colonel's stolen journal and his own past, wrote a detailed account of the railroad massacre and Thorne's plans for the Apache. He sent it with a trusted messenger to a territorial judge he knew to be an honest man. Justice, when it came, was not swift, but it was decisive. Faced with Corbin's detailed testimony and a growing number of complaints from his own junior officers, Colonel Thorne was recalled to Washington to face a military tribunal. His career was over, his reputation in ruins. Fletcher, his son, disgraced and facing his own troubles, left the territory for good. Weeks later, in a hidden valley west of Tucson, a new cabin stood near a small creek. Corbin and Mai had found a piece of land, a place to build a new life far from the ghosts of their past. The blood promise was fulfilled, not with a bullet, but with truth. One evening, as the sun set, Mai took the small silk pouch from a peg on the wall. She removed the piece of paper with its list of names and the carved wooden token. She placed the paper into the fireplace, watching it turn to ash. "It is finished," she said. She held the wooden token, the one bearing Corbin's name, for a long moment. Then, instead of casting it into the fire, she returned it to the pouch. "Some promises are ended," she said, her voice soft. "Others are transformed. This one now reminds me not of vengeance sought, but of healing found." Corbin came to stand beside her, his arms settling around her shoulders. "What now?" he asked. "Now," Mai said, leaning into his strength, "we live." The journey that had begun in violence and fear beside a desert river had ended here, in a quiet valley, with a peace neither had thought possible. They were 2 survivors, bound not by a shared tragedy, but by a shared future, a home reclaimed from the ashes of what had been lost.